All right. You there, Sean? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All
Ready to
right.
go.
We are live. Welcome, everybody, to the Bitcoin Bros first live episode. This is episode 1. We're going to be trying to do these every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central. Just going over Bitcoin strategy news, keeping you guys up to date. Put your questions in the chat. And if you have any additional questions, you can email us. It'll be in the description below. If you have any questions you want us to answer in upcoming live streams, you can do that. But yeah, we got Bitcoin above 100K today. We got a lot to talk about, and we're going to be at the Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas in the next couple of weeks. So if you guys are going to be there, make sure to say hi. We got a lot of exciting news coming pretty soon. We have a special guest that we're going to be interviewing this weekend, so be watching out for that. A big name in the Bitcoin space, so he'll be on our channel pretty soon. So be watching out for that. We're going to be getting into Bitcoin strategy today, going over price action. Everything we say in today's video, obviously, it's not financial advice. So we're going to go ahead and just jump into it here. Sean, I want to go ahead and look at the recent Bitcoin and strategy price action here.
Yep.
All right.
So right here, looking at Bitcoin's price, as you guys can see, right now we are at 1032. We've showed this in a lot of videos, so some of this is repetitive, but we don't edit these charts. These lines have been drawn for quite some time. So as you see, we have this global M2 money supply. Let's get rid of that for a quick second. And then let's see here. So Bitcoin has, held this support around the 93.5 range. We've showed this in previous videos. And the next level to pay attention to the upside is if you look to the left of the charts here, around the 106 range. So we probably will see Bitcoin going up to that range and probably the next day or so. We had this big candle, huge candle to the upside. This is zooming into the price action. We're looking at this on the daily. So once again, each one of these candles represents 1 day price action. And looking at these moving averages below, you see that the 50 has crossed over both the 100 and 200. And that is definitely bullish momentum. As you see, when this happened way back when last year, we had cross above the 50 and 200. One time it was a fake out, but once it convincingly got above, we've seen a massive rally to the upside. And once again, this looks like this could be some type of potential inverse head and shoulders pattern that could be getting ready to form here. If we zoom into this price action right here, once again, the level to pay attention to is the 106 range to see what the price action does. If we get sort of stopped how we did back here, back in January of this year, the price could just sort of trade below resistance, or could get a rejection, could get a pullback, and that could form that right shoulder where we could have that massive inverse head and shoulders, or we could just rip through this, hold above the previous resistance, flip it to support before having a continuation. It can play quite a few different ways. There's some news that that we'll get into a little bit later on in this stream, but everything right now to the upside. We told you guys around here on this 92 range, when you consolidate above previous resistance and flip it to support, get ready for a rally to the upside. This looks like it could have been some type of flag pattern. Just if you pull this up here, and then we had our breakout, technical breakout today. So this almost perfectly aligns with the 106 range. So that's the level to pay attention to for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's looking bullish. Is it a good time to buy? Every time's a good time to buy Bitcoin. Buy the tops, buy the bottoms, dollar cost average. You can be strategic with it. Is the 4-year cycle still intact? Right now, it seems like we could be leading into the latter part of 2025 and seeing some type of blow off peak potentially. But we do have some bigger players that are in the game now, institutions. There's a lot buy pressure that could be compressing Bitcoin to blast up to the upside. We could go into 2026 as far as the bull market. We could go into 2027. You really just can't say that this time is exactly the same because there's a lot more liquidity being sloshed around the market. So that's on the daily. One thing people want to, let me change my view here really quick. 1 second.
Getting another screen up there.
Yeah, it's pulling up another chart that I wanted to take a look at the Bitcoin dominance. So what a lot of people are waiting for is alt season. Is Bitcoin going to have a rollover with its dominance run up? Ignore a lot of these lines that we've drawn. We're going to zoom into the price action to see what we can anticipate. So this is on the daily. We're going to look on the weekly, a higher time frame, because Bitcoin has been sort of just trending to the upside for quite some time when it comes to this Bitcoin dominance chart. So just a quick recap for those that don't know, when alt seasons happen, that's when Bitcoin dominance drops off a cliff. So right here was the 2017 alt season. This was the 2020, 2021 alt season. And right now, we really haven't seen an alt season as of yet. But zooming into this current price action, we can see that Bitcoin is just going up and to the right. And the trend is your friend until the end. And will this trend break? Let's get rid of a few of these lines so it's not that messy. But if we put our moving averages on this chart, there's something to pay attention to. The 20 has crossed over both the 50 and the 100, which for Bitcoin dominance going up, this is definitely bullish. And that's why we went from all the way down to from 40% up to where we are right now at 65%. Right here, this did seem that maybe we could have rolled over here once we had this major wick down, but we got right back above the moving average. And this is something that you want to pay attention to as far as this green line here. Once we see similar price action to what happened in 2020, 2021, where this green line acted as support, and we started to roll over, the green line started to change. And that's when was the time to enter into alts, because we actually seen the green line cross back over the 100 and 200 moving averages, had a relief rally, but then fell off a cliff ultimately. So that's just something to be mindful of. What can happen? Are we going to see this roll over sooner rather than later? It's a possibility, but this trend still seems intact. Nothing's guaranteed until you see more rollover of price action, like some type of rounding top formation. But this seems to be just up and to the right. Once again, the levels to pay attention to is this next level up here around the 72 range. That's if the price action makes it up that high. But looking to the left of the charts, we see we had a back test here where we got rejected, a back test here, and a lot of traffic back here. This is back in from 2017 to 2021. So we could literally just stair step up here, and Bitcoin could hit its head up here before having a rollover, and this calls for an even bigger alt season if it dropped all the way back down to the 40 range. But if that does not happen, something that people need to be mindful of, and we've talked about this in previous videos as well, is looking out on the macro. That's on the weekly chart. Once again, this V shape and this right here looks like just a huge Adam and Eve pattern, which is bullish for the Bitcoin dominance. As much as people don't want to hear that, that is the reality. Now, will we come up here? Will we break through this and hold this 72 range? That's a whole different conversation. We got to wait to see what the charts give us. But right now, it seems all intact that the next level to pay attention to would be this 72 range. Now, what we do once we get there, we could get rejected, and this could then form some type of, shoulder, head, another inverse, maybe a huge cup and handle pattern. It's a lot of patterns that can form in favor of the Bitcoin dominance long term. And we might not see the alt seasons of past in 2021 and 2020. Not saying no altcoins will outperform or won't outperform Bitcoin. That will happen, but across the board, this is the alt market in total right here. This is the alt market in total. And one thing to be mindful of, coin market cap, if you look at the top left, there is millions and millions of more altcoins than there were back in 2020 and 2021. So what that means, the alt market is a lot more saturated. And then you have the big boys, the institutions have shown up. You're seeing nation state adoption. You're seeing states in the US passing Bitcoin strategic reserves. You're seeing all this buy pressure that's pent up for Bitcoin. And it is, it just seems that the big money is spending on Bitcoin and nothing else right now. So will we get a pump up to 72 range? That's how the charts are looking. Once again, nothing's guaranteed. And that's the level you want to pay attention to. If we seem to consolidate below and start to roll over, and we could have some bearish divergences in the charts, that could be a time to maybe diversify. And if you want to get a little bit risky, depending on what your risk appetite is, we're Bitcoin first here. And if you want to trade the alt market, not saying alts are all bad, but just be very careful, be cautious, because, there's just a lot of uncertainty in what can happen, especially with all this demand we're seeing with strategy buying Bitcoin. If you guys tuned in to Strategy World a few days ago, there's tons of institutions that are there that are now implementing getting ready to implement the same strategy that Strategy's doing, and ones that are already continuing to do that and gaining steam and momentum with their Bitcoin holdings. So that's the biggest change for this cycle. Did you have anything you wanted to say, Aaron, about the Bitcoin dominance?
The chart looks like it's due for a correction, but if you look at all the fundamentals, if you look at what's actually going on, you look at what the states are doing, like we just said, Arizona and New Hampshire, they just are, they have their Bitcoin strategic reserve, where they're going to be actually buying Bitcoin and holding it for years and years and years. Like you said, we have Strategy buying billions of dollars of Bitcoin every week. The ETFs are buying, hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin every single day. And you don't see any, and you have countries also buying Bitcoin. You have El Salvador. We have the president talking about having a Bitcoin strategic reserve. We don't see that for Solana. We don't see that for Ethereum. We have ICP in the chat. We don't see that for ICP. I do feel like, personally, I think going forward, Bitcoin does seem like it is going to be the winner. There's going to be some altcoins that have some, perform decently. But I personally think that Bitcoin and then the Bitcoin proxies are going to be the new altcoins. So when you have Strategy, you have, Metaplanet, you have Semler Scientific, those will probably be the companies that, move up and down like the altcoins used to. I think the altcoins it's just 15.1 million altcoins. You don't really know what to buy. People are kind of tired of getting pump and dumped on. They want to know what they're investing in. So I think this time is a little bit different than 2021, especially, we've been in a bull market for 2 years, and every single altcoin compared to Bitcoin, as you can see in this chart, has gone down compared to BTC. So this time may be different. I don't, back in 2021, I would say Bitcoin, it was easier for that money to get shuffled into the altcoins because there was more retail traders. This time around, we have more institutions. We have governments getting involved. We have states getting involved. These guys aren't going to be trading their Bitcoin for Solana or Ethereum or any other altcoin or Dogecoin or anything like that. So I think it's a different type of investor. I don't think ETF buyers are going to be trading for the Ethereum ETF. The Ethereum ETF really hasn't had as much success as the Bitcoin ETF. So like the chart you see here, it may be due for a correction potentially, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin dominance just goes up to 90%. Yeah, that's my thoughts on that. But I wanted to ask you, Sean, did you have the money supply chart, the M2 money supply chart versus Bitcoin?
Yeah, let's take a look at that really quick.
Yeah, I wanted to look at this one because a lot of people have been, this has been circulating on Twitter, and it's been correlating with Bitcoin over the past 2 years very, very, very closely, but it hasn't always been that way. So I kind of just, if you want to take a look at that and check that one out.
Okay. So this is the M2 money supply, global M2 money supply chart as far as the yellow line goes. Shout out to Colin Talks Crypto, as he's the one that developed this chart. But it seems pretty useful. If you look at it, you can see from the Bitcoin price action, there does seem to be some type of parallel, even though Bitcoin's price seems to be a lagging indicator. Let me get this chart a little bit prettier so we can follow it and clean this up a bit, get rid of these moving averages. Okay, so as you see here, you can see when this M2 money supply chart has a peak, which there's a peak here before some sideways consolidation, a peak here before a pullback, then some brief sideways consolidation. And then right now we just been going up and we're in new all-time high territory right now. So why this is important to pay attention to, and if we look at this first peak and see how many days after the fact that Bitcoin then blasted up to put new all-time highs in, that first peak was roughly about 70 to 75 days, give or take. It traded in that range. And the M2 money supply was a leading indicator for Bitcoin. So we see that there. And then we've seen another peak here. This happened for the M2 money supply in October of 24. And if we just get our day counter out once again, and you'll see that there is some confluence in the charts around that 70 to 75 day range. Once again, we're having a blast off through previous resistance, and then blasting through, and around that 70, 75 day range, we are then at new all-time highs before we then start to consolidate again. So right now, there's no guarantee that this peak is in just quite yet for the M2, but let's just use this peak from the leading indicator perspective. This is present day. And if we pull this out 70, let's just use 71 for the benchmark, we could say that Bitcoin, there's a high probable chance based off of history, price action of the Bitcoin chart versus the M2 money supply chart, that by sometime in midsummer that we will see Bitcoin blasting past the previous all-time high and in new all-time high territory. Now, where that price action is, totally different conversation. Just it's not going to be sitting around that 106 range. So there's a lot of confluence in these charts pointing to the upside. This has been tested really since this bull market. There is some parallel there. So that's what we see over the next few months. The mantra has been sell in May and go away. Well, we're in May, and there's a lot of looks like upside potential when it comes to Bitcoin and the overall crypto market. Cuban Pete, see that you asked about CEP. We're going to be talking about companies that are going to be doing their own Bitcoin stacking before this is out. So that's definitely an agenda to talk about. So stay tuned there. But yeah, that's the M2 money supply. Aaron, I don't know if you had any thoughts or wanted to weigh in.
The only thing I would say here is just a lot of people have been taking this as face value, like Bitcoin's going to go up. I mean, all of us, everybody watching the stream probably wants Bitcoin to go up. I want Bitcoin to go up. But if we look at 2022, I believe the M2 was going up in 2022 and Bitcoin decided to go down during that time period. So just because this is going up doesn't automatically mean we're going to get the same move from Bitcoin, even though it has been very correlated in the past 2 years. So hopefully we continue to see the same thing, but just wanted to put a little disclaimer out there for that one.
Cool. And just a quick segue, really quick, for those that are tuning in, we appreciate your support. We're once again going to be doing this every week. This is episode 1 for us. So make sure you go ahead and smash that like button. If you have any questions, throw it in the chat, and we'll try to get to all those questions as soon as we can. But we're just trying to pump this through the YouTube algorithm as best as we can. There's one more chart that I want to take a look at before we sort of have a pivot. And this is sort of in the altcoin realm. Ethereum has been, sort of waking up from the depths. As you see at the current time it's recording, we're looking at almost 2,200, a little bit shy of 2,200. And Ethereum since December of 24 has just been in a downtrend. And really today was the first day that really has a massive bullish engulfing candle. But there's one thing to just be mindful of with this price action is there's still some levels that Ethereum needs to get back above, because if you look at this downwards white line, this is just resistance diagonal, and it literally came back up and blasted, and didn't blast through it, but hit its head and got stopped. So that's something to be mindful of. And then there's some confluence right here. If we pull out our horizontals, and let's get a horizontal line, and you look where this support was, this line here acted as support, 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 support. We fell through it, and then sort of we're just sitting below support, and that's when we fell off. So this downwards resistance line is in confluence right here with this support line. So Ethereum is not out the woods yet. This is the level to pay attention to. Getting back above this now resistance level, flip this resistance to support, and then getting back above where the 200 moving average is, the red line, about $2,700. That is what we'd like to see for Ethereum. And if this is a situation that plays out, we would see ETH along with a lot of altcoins then take off, and we could then see the Bitcoin dominance then have that roll over and drop to lower levels. So this is something to be mindful of, just looking at the overall alt market. Ethereum historically has been sort of that indicator for whether alts are investable or non-investable. Once again, you'll have alts that will outperform ETH, and then sometimes Ethereum will outperform the majority of the alt market. But if Ethereum does take off from here, alts probably will follow. So that's for whatever that's worth.
Gotcha. Okay, we can talk a little bit about some of the Bitcoin proxies. We had a couple questions in the chat about that. So we can talk about, actually, I can share my screen here, and we have a list of all the Bitcoin proxies, and you can see how much Bitcoin each one of these Bitcoin proxies holds. A little bit about what I was talking about earlier. We have 80 companies with more than 15 Bitcoin. We didn't have this 4 years ago. We didn't have this 3 years ago. I think it's really interesting that Strategy has started this playbook, and they have been very successful. So you're going to see other companies like Semler, like Metaplanet, like Marathon Digital. They're all putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet now. And the only reason they're doing that is because they saw the success of Strategy, and they understand that Bitcoin is the hardest asset on the planet. But I think this trend continues. as Bitcoin's going up, strategy's going up, other companies are going to see all these companies, all they're doing is buying Bitcoin. And they're like, oh, well, their operating business isn't even performing that well. All they're doing is putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet. There's going to be a lot more companies that are going to want to do this so that they can, take advantage of the volatility and the up and to the right of Bitcoin. And I think that a lot of these companies are going to perform very well, and we're going to see like companies like the Blockchain Group. They're a French company. They're one of the first European companies that wants to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and I think they have a target of 10,000 Bitcoin, I think over the next 2 years or 1 year, and they're going to start it in Europe. And then other companies in Europe are going to look at the Blockchain Group and say, oh, they've been successful. Just like what we're seeing with Metaplanet in Japan, we're seeing other companies in Japan now following what Metaplanet has done. So I think that trend is just going to continue as Bitcoin goes up, and we're going to see more and more companies just putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet. Anything you want to add there, Sean?
Yeah. So in my opinion, there's a lot of opportunity in this space here, investing into some Bitcoin proxies. Strategy, or MSTR, as you see in this chart here, they're leading the way with over 555,000 Bitcoin. The reality is can a company catch strategy? Probably not, but there are big players out there. If they do get in the space, there's opportunity for them to definitely catch up to strategy in that capacity. But we're talking about publicly listed companies here. But the big opportunity is with some of the micro cap companies. And when you talk about micro cap, you're talking about anywhere from 100 million to a few $1 billion in overall valuation. A few that Aaron had mentioned, you have, Saylor, Scientific, you have Metaplanet, and you have to look at what the company is actually doing. The underlying base layer company, basically their profit loss margins. I know in the long term, Bitcoin is going to outpace those margins, but in the short term, companies that are more nimble will have more price action to the upside. For instance, one that's been shaking up the headlines and a lot's been going on there is Metaplanet. They have, I believe this chart might be a little out of date. They had 5,000. I think they purchased just another 555. So As of right now, they have 1% or 0.01% of Strategy's holdings, which if you look over the last 6 months, they've been buying just as aggressively as Strategy has. Obviously, there's more liquidity that, Michael Saylor has access to. That's why they can, purchase big troughs like they do. But these companies got to start somewhere. And that is definitely a company, not financial advice, but they seem to be mimicking the Strategy playbook. And that's what you want to look for. You want to look for, because Strategy's also already showed you what they can do. They have literally 100x their company by doing one thing. They literally just bought Bitcoin and bought Bitcoin consistently, week over week over week. So that's what you need to be mindful of when looking at these companies. Understand their Bitcoin playbook, understand what their executive staff's goals are, and understand how transparent they're being with those goals. At one point, GME was definitely a lot of speculation and interest that they were going to be dipping their toes into the Bitcoin space. Now, will that still happen? That's the big question. That it seems that Ryan Cohen has some plans, but he's been very hush-hush about it. So, they have their earnings coming up next month. It's a few weeks out. So we'll see if there's some type of announcement there. There's speculation that could be the case. But, most Bitcoin treasury companies that are making this pivot are being very, very transparent. And maybe Ryan has a different playbook. We don't have any insight there, but you have to do all that due diligence when weighing all these options, because this is still the early innings. A company could start buying Bitcoin and then stop buying Bitcoin because of some legal issues. So just be mindful when you're investing, but there's a lot of opportunity in the space right now. There's hundreds of companies that have interest globally. Fast forward 5 years, this is going to be the standard. There's going to be thousands or tens of thousands of companies that already have Bitcoin strategies in practice. So, keep that in mind. There's some questions about CEP. Aaron, do you want to, weigh in on CEP?
We can get to that in a second. You mentioned GameStop, so I had some speculation. Earnings calls on June 6th.
Okay.
I think they bought the Bitcoin already. I think they got it at 80K, and there's no bot. They don't have their announcement on Twitter, but you might want to put some calls in, not financial advice, before June 6th. That might be what I'm doing. Maybe not financial advice, but I think they bought it already. We'll see. CEP. I haven't looked enough into it to talk too deeply about it. I know it's been very volatile, that company, but I don't I haven't looked too deeply. I know they want to start off with the $4 billion Bitcoin buy. So I'm wondering if you had any other insight there around CEP, and also to mention before that, like some companies we didn't mention were CEP and then Jet King, the Indian company. They want to buy 18,000 Bitcoin by the next halving. Just that we didn't mention them, so they're not on the screen, so I wanted to bring that up as well. But yeah, if you had some other insight on CEP there, you can talk about that.
I've had surface level understanding of CEP and what's going on there. Next week's video, we will definitely do a deep dive and look and see what Jack and team is doing there. But I do understand that CEP at one point is going to go through a merger that is going to merge with 21. And my last checking, I haven't heard of a date of an announcement for that merger. But to my understanding, the Bitcoin that 21 plans to buy on, I'm not sure if it's day one or if they're going to just do sporadic buys over a given time frame. I think it's a one-time purchase to start out with. Is it 40,000 Bitcoin? Is that what it was, Aaron?
I think 4 billion. Is that 40,000? Yeah, something like that.
4 billion. Okay, well, the thing is it's not going to be a one-to-one conversion with CEP into 21, meaning that CEP is going to own a percentage of the overall Bitcoin that 21 is going to purchase through that merger. So that is, to my understanding, so there could be some dilution there. So, just be, mindful of that potentially happening. For instance, I think it's like a 2.7% ownership stake of the Bitcoin that CEP is going to have. So, just for numbers' sake, if it was 100 Bitcoin that 21 is going to own, then CEP would have exposure to 2.7 of those. So in that merger, there will be dilution of the shares of CEP into 21. So for whatever that's worth, we might be looking into that once there's more transparency as to when the merger is and the fine details on it. But once again, that's surface level of what I've seen. And I will be doing a deep dive and we'll get back to you on that in the next video.
Yeah, it was 42,000 Bitcoin that they're looking to buy.
42. Okay, so that's a good starting point, but that doesn't mean CEP is going to own all 42,000 of those Bitcoin. So when you're doing the math, like when Bitcoin hits 500,000, $1 million, based on your investment thesis and how many shares of CEP you have, when that merger happens, if you have 100 shares of CEP, you're not going to have 100 shares of exposure to 21. So that's the big catch-22.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be patient with that one.
I was laughing at Luke's comment. He didn't know there was two of us.
That's funny. Do you want to go ahead and get into some strategy? We can look at some of the earnings call stuff that came out and share some of that stuff. You want to check that out?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, if you want to take it, yeah, I'll piggyback.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so just to talk a little bit about strategies, earnings, I think it was last week. So they started with their new 42 capital raising plan. A lot of people on YouTube that I saw talking about strategy that aren't in the weeds. I think they believe that they already bought the first 21 billion and the first 21 billion and also the 21 billion of fixed income with the the debt offerings. But obviously, we know they haven't finished that initial 21 billion for the fixed income portion of this. But it's going to be really interesting to see how fast it takes them to get through this entire 42 billion. I think obviously they're going to get through that 21 billion ATM for MicroStrategy pretty quickly. I mean, they got through the first 21 billion in since I think it's been from November to about May. So it took them like 6-7 months to get through the first 21 billion under the ATM plan. So I think maybe by the end of the year, especially if Bitcoin keeps up with this price action we've seen lately and it trends towards 120, 130, maybe even higher, I think they're definitely going to get through that, that next 21 billion. No promises, obviously, but I think that could be next. And some people don't like the ATM because they think it hurts the share price. But you have to realize, guys, that he's selling shares. With the right now the NAV premium is 2x. He's selling shares to buy the hardest asset in the world. So like, if he wasn't selling shares, he wasn't accumulating the Bitcoin, the stock wouldn't have any value. So they're trying to get 1 million Bitcoin, and they may get there if they continue on with this plan. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how STRK grows and STRF grows. And it doesn't look like they may do some converts in the future, but I think that's going to be dependent on how the market is. Because when the market's volatile and is going up, they probably will have more success with the convertible debt. But with STRK and STRF, it's going to be really interesting to see how those kind of pan out and how the ATMs for those grow. Yeah, and looking at some other things from the earnings call. Yeah, strategies outperformed everything else. It's outperformed Bitcoin since they started accumulating Bitcoin. The next closest thing is NVIDIA. I think this just goes to show that other companies are going to be paying attention to all this performance. This is why we see 80 companies now buying Bitcoin and putting on the balance sheet, because they see strategy is up 3,000%. This was a dying company before Michael Saylor decided to buy Bitcoin. And in the span of 4 years, they're up a massive amount, and they've outperformed literally everything else. So other companies are on notice, and I don't think they're going to be slowing down anytime soon. They're going to continue to execute this strategy. And I think people are still pretty early to strat. I think it has a lot more upside. I think people getting in now, if you're new, I think you have. I mean, this thing has a lot more upside. Obviously, not financial advice, but I think both of us believe this company is going to $1 trillion company and beyond after that. So, anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, the flywheel will continue with strategy, and right now, give or take a few billion between friends, strategy is $100 billion company. Went from 1 to 100 billion once again with the Bitcoin strategic play that they've been doing. So right now, is it a good time to buy? Once again, not financial advice, but we're strategy holders. We believe in it long term. Michael Saylor has overproven his conviction, and that's one thing when vetting out some of the micro companies that are getting into the space. Are they going to have that same conviction that he does? Some of them are displaying similar traits and similar strategies that strategy's doing. So once again, strategy is going to be the benchmark moving forward, and it's the gift that keeps giving. Saylor basically taught all these other executives what he's doing and why it works and why the flywheel won't stop. So yeah, huge fan.
Yeah. And like you can see on the screen, most widely held Bitcoin proxy, 13,000 institutions, over 800,000 retail accounts, and over 500 plus ETF funds that they're in, 55 million beneficiaries. This goes to show the performance of strategy and people wanting to buy it, but it also goes to show that people are really starting to understand what Bitcoin is now and wanting to own Bitcoin through, I guess a leverage play. So that's pretty cool to see. Pretty cool to see there. Any other thoughts, Sean? I was gonna talk a little bit about Strike and Strife after this.
We can get into Strike and Strife. There's another thing I want to talk about with strategy specifically. We had mentioned them being $1 trillion company, and our belief is that eventually strategy will have the #1 market cap of companies globally. So if you look at top 5, you're looking at Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia, Amazon, Google, ranging from anywhere from like 1.8 billion to about 3.2 billion. I'm sorry, trillion, not billion, trillion. 1.8 trillion to 3.2 trillion dollars. So just looking at that to outpace a company like Microsoft, that's a 32x, give or take. As far as where strategy is right now. So for every dollar you invest in for the long term, that would be a 32x return on your investment. That's when it hits the $3.2 trillion threshold. We're not given a time frame, but it's all going to be indicative of when Bitcoin hits certain thresholds. But one thing to be mindful of, the global M2 money supply will keep expanding, which means these $1 trillion companies came about due to that fact because of the money supply continuing to expand. So best believe Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia will continue to increase in valuation as well. So that $3.2 trillion threshold right now, that's #1, that could end up being, number 5 or 6 when that time comes. But over time, we do believe that, MSTR strategy, as Bitcoin grows, the flywheel's going to continue to grow, and they're going to continue to keep eating as many Bitcoin as they can. That being strategy, they'll probably get well over 1 million Bitcoin when it's all said and done. So long term, when you zoom out on the charts and you look about, a given time frame, strategy will be one of the most profitable businesses in valuation terms in the world.
Yeah, it's like the dollar's broken, everything's going up, but strategy is going up faster than everything else. So, yeah. Let me go ahead and present. So I want to talk a little bit about Strife and Strike. If you are new to strategy, I believe these are 2 investments that you should understand. I think these investments these products from strategy are really going to increase the value of Bitcoin over the long term. Strife is the 10% fixed dividend play, non-callable preferred. And you have Strike, which is 8%, but it has a convertible preferred. So when strategy gets up to $1,000 per share, there is a convert that you can do there with Strike. So it's a little bit different than Strife. But these 2 products here, I think, are super important for strategy and Bitcoin, just because Saylor's really targeting the fixed income market, and he's trying to get the money out of the fixed income market in bonds and then bring them into Bitcoin, using the power of Bitcoin to be able to offer a higher APY on your money with the 8 and 10% fixed vehicles. And I think more of these vehicles will come out in the future, but we're already starting to see, you see here, this was just this past week. If you look at the STRK ATM part right here, we had $52 million coming in to the STRK and the ATM. So they sold that and bought Bitcoin with it. So these products are starting to grow. This was the biggest week yet for STRK. And let me show this chart here. So right now we have Bitcoin up here in the left. It's just a little small $2 trillion market cap compared to all these other things. Got gold at 16 trillion. But what Saylor is really targeting here is the $300 trillion bond market, which he just wants 1% of that, which would be $3 trillion. Bonds right now, if you buy bonds, you're going to get a 4% return. That's due to high interest rates right now as well. So as interest rates come down, as inflation's probably going to come down, the Fed's probably going to lower interest rates eventually. And as those come down, the bond returns are going to be even lower, 4, 3, 2%. We could see some of that money flow from this entire bond market and go into STRK, STRF. So what Saylor is essentially doing here is he's kind of taking money from the traditional markets and then putting it into Bitcoin. So he's kind of like demonetizing the traditional market, putting it into Bitcoin, and $3 trillion going to Bitcoin. That's not going to just double the market cap, put it at 5 trillion. There's a multiplier effect when that amount of money comes into a scarce asset that can't be printed, and there's only a set supply, and you have all this demand coming from everywhere else. If $3 trillion was coming to Bitcoin, that would have a huge effect on the market cap. And there's a model we'll be looking at later that we developed based on the Bitcoin box from last year. There's a 17x multiplier on the money that goes into Bitcoin that reflects in the market cap. So just for example, $3 trillion going into Bitcoin with a 17x multiplier. Quick math, that would be what, $51 trillion going into the, adding on to the Bitcoin market cap. I know that seems crazy, but that could be something that happens in the future. So I think those two products, along with other products that they bring in the future, I think could really empower Bitcoin, for years to come. And they're just getting started. Didn't even talk about, they're not rated yet. These two products aren't rated. So what that means is when these products aren't rated, you have a lot of money from like insurance companies. You have from insurance companies. I have this written down. One second, guys. Pension funds and mutual funds. So pension funds, insurance companies, and mutual funds, they won't invest in products like these until like they're rated. So there's just a lot of money sitting on the sideline waiting to buy these products. So as they become more mature, as they continue to perform well for years to come, we'll see more confidence in both these products. So that confidence could increase or could equal more dollars coming into both these products in the future. So yeah, I'm just super bullish on STRF, STRK. I don't invest in them personally, but I think a lot of that money could flow into Bitcoin. So yeah. Anything else you want to add there, Sean?
Yeah, it's traditional markets right now are intersecting with crypto, specifically Bitcoin, but then the crypto markets. There's, for these two vehicles with STRK and STRF, there's limited downside and a lot of upside potential to live off of it in the same capacity you could a dividend. Obviously, you can reinvest it and roll it right back in. Everybody's different investment strategies is going to be a little bit different and whatnot, but I love it. I love what they're doing. It's really taking the once wild west of the crypto market, and now it's TradFi is getting merged with it. Bitcoin's went corporate, so we're seeing a lot of beautiful things going in space, in my opinion.
Okay. Do you want to talk about MSTY, Misty, the other dividend plays?
Yeah, I actually have a chart that I want to pull up here.
Okay.
We've been seeing quite a few interesting things with Misty over the past few months. There's a lot of opportunity, in our opinion, when it comes to this particular new vehicle that Saylor and team have developed. So this is the Misty chart. and there's already some scribbles all over it, so forgive me there. But as you see, it seems to be, since its inception, it seems to be just trading in this channel right now. The channel seems to have a floor around $18, $19 and ceilings of about $45. So the first thing, this is not financial advice talking about this product. So this is an ETF wrapper that can't talk, that operates with in the capacity of using leverage. So it's not just one-to-one. How does Misty generate yield? There is synthetic long exposure through MSTR. So what they do, they, instead of holding MSTR directly, they create long positions with in-the-money call options in general, selling put options, and also selling covered calls, along with holding short-term U.S. treasuries. That's how they're generating any type of yield when it comes to paying this out. Can you lose your money that you invest into this? Yes. Could it go to zero? Yes. Going that low would have to be something catastrophic, but depending on your risk appetite, how much money you're putting into this vehicle, that's something to be mindful of. The investment time, there's a time to invest and there's a time to divest in this. In my opinion, once again, this is not financial advice, is when we see the price, on an uptrend. And as you're well aware, this is going to trade in lockstep with Bitcoin. So if you understand what Bitcoin is doing, what the overall market's doing through a Bitcoin lens, you can see how you can position yourself in these other vehicles. So, if you bought this top up here at $45 per share, and then it melted down, you would, have some substantial loss because obviously acting in the capacity that it does, when you're doing, call options that are in the money, or, when call options go against you, that's why you can lose a lot. But if you know how to time the market, when to get in and out of these vehicles, you can sort of ride the upside, de-risk on the downside, ride the upside. I believe the winter WNTR ticker is sort of the inverse of MSTY, I believe. Don't quote me to that one-to-one, but that's sort of what you could do on the downside if you want to do that, whatever your risk appetite is. But it's not just the standard dividend payout where your capital is protected 100%. There is erosion of your initial investment. You can even, one thing we suggest to do if you don't fully understand these vehicles, use ChatGPT and ask the right questions. So for instance, if you put $10,000 or $100,000 or whatever your figure is into MicroStrategy 1 year ago and MSTY 1 year ago, and show me what my return on investment would be, you can sort of make your own thesis based off of that. So that's the first thing there. There is one more chart that I wanted to show. This is actually going to steal someone's Twitter post because I like the way it laid out. We're not personally invested into MSTY right now. Could it be something in the future? Most definitely, there's opportunity right now. I believe so, but my investment strategy, what I'm doing personally, is not involving any ETF wrappers at the moment. But so this is individual here. So shout out to Richie B. Want to be fresh? Shout out to you. But it looks like he started off with about 17,500 shares, and the current price of this is around $23.54. So just doing some quick math, if you wanted to do this today in the same capacity, that's an investment of about $410,000. And seeing what the payout is off of this, Let's see, this is in January. We can actually look back at the charts and see what the price was back in January of this year. Let me look really quick. We'll just say middle of January. So it was even higher, it's $27. So basically off of this, you get a dividend payout per share, $40,000, and the dividends fluctuate month over month, and this is indicative of what the market's doing, whether the market's going up or coming down. But you see May, 15,000 shares. Looks like they may have sold off 5,000, divested, and then got a $35,000 payout. So the thing you want to pay attention to is from January, if you would have just invested this money directly into MicroStrategy, what your return would be. And sometimes it's a break even. Sometimes, MSTY could be in the profit. But once again, that's the fluctuation of this chart. So just be careful in trading these vehicles, because there's a lot of people that are basically, making it seem like this is just you park your money here and there's no downside risk. So just be mindful of that when you're looking at these vehicles. There's a time to get in, there's a time to get out.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good for people who don't want to sell cover calls and do it all themselves. But even in that chart you're just showing there, the third row, I added it up and did an average. I think over the year he's like going to get 400,000 around there from that return. So that's pretty good from what he's seen for the first half of the year.
Yeah, so the first half, there was definitely opportunity to make substantial money in MSTR value, because you got to look at it in not just dollar value, whatever asset you're, potentially divesting from to invest into one of those vehicles. So if your denominator is Bitcoin, if your denominator is MSTR, just at the end of when you're done using that vehicle, hopefully you would have more shares or Bitcoin when you're done with your strategy. So just keep that in mind. Don't just look at dollar value, please.
True. Yeah, let's take a turn here, and I was going to check out, unless there's something else, Sean, I was going to look at this Bitcoin price model that we created back in January.
Yeah, you can go ahead and pull it up.
Okay, let's pull this up here. If I can find it. Is it? Let me see. Nope, show this thing. Yep, so this is a Bitcoin model that we created back in January. And what this does is it takes all the buys from saylor and the ETFs, which were the two biggest buyers last year, gets that total, compares that to the market cap from January 1st to December 31st, which was about $1 trillion increase in 2024. And we had $57 billion come in from the ETFs and saylor. So if you look at that amount of money that came in and what it affected to the market cap, that would be a 17x. Now, obviously, there were probably a lot more buyers. There's retail buyers. There was countries buying Bitcoin, a lot more buyers than just saylor and ETFs, but these were probably the biggest two last year. So just to keep it simple, you can see that there was a 17x increase multiplier effect that I kind of hinted at earlier in the video to compare to the numbers last year. So we're going to use that to kind of predict where Bitcoin could go this year. So this was created back in January. We have the potential saylor buys for 2025 were around $25 billion. That was just an estimate where we thought it could be. As of yesterday, they were at 10.23 billion. So that is on pace, I believe, to hit around 25 billion by the end of the year. If Bitcoin keeps going up, I think that number will be a lot higher. We have the ETF buys in 2025. So this was negative for about the first 3 or 4 months of the year, and they just started to pick up recently. As of yesterday, the ETF buys were around $5 billion of inflows. So this, I think, could hit 40 billion by the end of the year, because when the ETFs move, they move really quickly. You'll see some days where they inflow $1 billion in a single day. So that is something to watch out for. This could grow, but right now it's only at 5 billion. Then we have potential Bitcoin proxy buys. Right now we just had that at 4 billion, which we thought was really conservative. And the reason why we put 4 billion is because of 21 Capital. We know 4 billion is coming from them. So just focusing on them and not even including any of the other Bitcoin proxies, Metaplanet, Similar, anybody else, we're just looking at them. We were very conservative with that number. So that was a $4 billion inflow from them. And then the US state buys, we know we have 500 million from New Hampshire. Arizona just passed theirs today. I'm not sure on the exact figure. Texas is probably going to pass theirs as well, and I believe they want to buy $500 million as well. So we just put that at a conservative 1 billion. There could definitely be other states that also buy Bitcoin. So that gives us a total of around 70 billion. With that 17x multiplier, that would put the market cap effect at 1.203 trillion. And if we add that to what the market cap was at the beginning of this year, and add that to what, last year, that give us a $3 trillion market cap by the end of the year. And that put Bitcoin's price at around 154K. We're currently at 95,000. So this model isn't playing out too bad. We made it back in January. So we'll see how it goes for the rest of the year. But I definitely think that we could see somewhere around 150,000 Bitcoin by the end of the year. Right now, we're actually above. This was made yesterday. So we're at 103 right now. So we're a little bit higher right now. So any thoughts there, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, this is good stuff here, but we've talked about this in our videos, charts countless times, but that seems like a very conservative estimate. Once again, not financial advice, for whatever that's worth. Could Bitcoin fall short of that? Yes, it could. Could it overshoot that and go to 200,000 or 300,000? Yes, it can. Right now, there's a lot of pent up buy pressure, and basically, no one really knows how high that peak will be, but there's a high probable chance. Seeing 120, 130, that seems to be a lock. Don't take that to the bank, but this is just based off what the charts are showing me. But yeah, that's my take on it. And that's a conservative approach and seems definitely doable by the end of the year.
Gotcha. Cool. And everybody ignore those ZAI 41Z comments. Just scammers in the chat. Anything else you want to talk about? We can any other direction we want to go, Sean? Or?
Maybe one last item. Did we look at the bitbo.io site?
Oh no, let me go ahead and pull that up.
Okay. Yeah, because there's a lot of useful information that
this one here.
Yeah. So if you guys aren't aware of this, this site here is treasuries.bitbo.io, and what this is showing, it's basically the Bitcoin holdings in any public traded or private companies, ETFs and countries included. So this first chart here, the totals by category, if you add the number of Bitcoin up from the ETFs being 1.35 million, countries 529,000, public companies all the way down through DeFi, I believe it's about 3.2 or 3.3. We added it up earlier today. I can't remember what the figure is, but it's over $3 million. I'm sorry, 3 million coins that have been bought since they started tracking. ETFs went live early January of 2024. And then really since then, so that's not including any retail investment or anything of that sort, because there's tons of retail investors like you and I that are DCAing in on a monthly, weekly, daily basis. So that just goes to show you within, let's see, what are we in now? May. That's about 18 months, over 3 million coins. You have millions that are lost already. The buy pressure from publicly listed companies, privately listed companies, the strategies, the new companies that are getting involved with strategies, Bitcoin strategy. You know, nation states buying it, like El Salvador, and you know, now states in the U.S. buying Bitcoin, the federal government buying Bitcoin. There's only so much Bitcoin that is mined on a daily basis, and just looking at Saylor, can't remember the exact metric, but he's doing tens of X's of the multiple that is bought over the next, like the amount of Bitcoin that would be created over like a 2 or 3 month window, he's scooping up in, you know, a one-time buy. So that just goes to show you that, yeah, there's sellers as well in the market, and you know they may not have long-term conviction for whatever they're selling for. Sometimes there's whale games that are being played. That's a different conversation. But this chart here and this site here will help you track, you know, how rapidly these entities are accumulating Bitcoin, really just within the first year and a half.
Yep. We've got a lot of interesting information. You can even come down in here and see different countries, how much Bitcoin they own, ETFs, all that's there. So yeah, make sure to check out that website. But yeah, I think that's mostly all we had to talk about today. Any closing remarks, Sean?
Yeah, a few things. We're going to be doing this on a weekly basis, as we mentioned at the beginning of this live stream. Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. So you know, make sure that you know keep supporting. We appreciate all your guys' support. Ignore the scammers in the channel, the XI14IZ, whatever that is. Please don't fall for any of that. That's
the mod.
Yeah, that's not anything that we're promoting or that we're involved with. So it's unfortunately something that, you know, I think YouTube could be a better job at doing, clearing that stuff up, but you know, it's outside of our control. Last comment is that we will be in Bitcoin Vegas for those that will be coming. So, you know, if you guys are coming, be, you know, nice to meet you. You know, so just see you at the conference if you come. That'll be in a few weeks.
Yep. We'll be at the conference, so feel free to don't be shy to say hi. And yeah, man, I think next half of the year, I think is an exciting time to be in Bitcoin. So if you guys have been watching our channel for past 4 years, we've been doing this for 4 years now. So if you guys have been watching, hopefully that you've gotten some gains, and I'm super excited for the second half of the year. I think Bitcoin's going to do well, and I think Strategy's in a great position to do well, and a lot of these Bitcoin proxies are going to do well. And we'll see if we get an altcoin season or not. We're not too sure about that one, but I'm super excited.
I'll leave it at this. The last thing I'll say is there's a lot of opportunity. We talked about some of the opportunity on this live stream. If you missed some of it, go back and rewatch it. It'll be on our channel. There's a lot of opportunity right now with TradFi getting integrated into the crypto sphere. So make sure that you don't miss out on any opportunity, because opportunity never feels like it until you look back and be like, oh yeah, that paid off. So for whatever that's worth, not financial advice.
All right, guys, we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in.